Welcome to another episode of Out of the Blank podcast. If you just listened to the last episode, you heard me and Cecil rant about things for 2 hours. Cecil, I don't think I need to let you introduce yourself, but Steven's here with us. We're going to be talking a lot about the paranormal, cryptid, kind of this area of exploration that I've always had a fascination with. I found it increasingly easier to talk about now. I don't know if that's coming into your guys' world at all, but I've seen a lot more people open about claims. I'm assuming because of the UAP hearings, or just other things that have come more to the forefront, has become less of a taboo subject and more of something that people are open about speaking about. Now, do I think the criticism is still there? Yes, I do. But I still think that now people are more entertaining it and having their own experience or beliefs, or just talking about it more in a conversation format.
I agree 100%. So, Steven, you can get started, buddy.
Yeah, it's amazing the turnaround that's taken place. I remember years ago, I didn't after I'd had my first sighting in 2009. I remember I told very few people about what I actually thought I'd seen that day, and as I've said many times, the argument went on in my head as to, was that a bear or was that something else? Because it didn't move like a bear. I knew that. Moved way too fast, didn't have a muzzle or anything like that on it. And I remember one time, it was my wife, she worked at a local radio station. They tried to get me to call in and talk about it, because one of the guys on the morning show, he has an interest in the subject, and he was trying to get me to call in. I remember talking about that at the job. Where it's like, "You're not going to tell people you saw a Bigfoot, are you?" so I mean, from that right there, I kind of just dropped it immediately. But I didn't call in. But yeah, that right there, that's the thing. Whether a lot of people, give the Finding Bigfoot people a hard time, but they definitely open the door for people to talk about the things that are not supposed to exist. And for that, I mean, they should get credit for it, at least on that part.
Did you ever know that the Bigfoot community was as big of a community as you know now? Because like I've noticed this with every topic now. Like I'm starting to get interested in ripperology, which is Jack the Ripper studies. And that's like the JFK community. It's closed off. Everyone's got their own independent theories, and they just assault each other with comments and remarks and things if they go against their own theories. And I'm sure the Bigfoot community is pretty positive, but everyone has their own idea or belief. And I mean, speaking to researchers like yourself, or people that have explored and experienced Bigfoot, and then other people that have come with claims where I need to ask you about these. Do you believe the claims about people that say that they watched a Bigfoot give birth or helped out with a Bigfoot give birth or something? Because again, dude, I can look out my house right now, like look out the window. There's a fucking ocean there. There's no trees. I can't tell you that I've seen a Bigfoot in the woods. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. With that right there, what you get into is, even though the Bigfoot community, it's a really big community, but you have people who have very strong differing opinions. You have somebody like L.A. Marzulli. Now, L.A. Marzulli believes that these things, they're Nephilim, whereas you have some other people who believe, no, that's not the case at all. They're another kind of human. And I mean, they're truly at odds, with what LA teaches and believes. The truth is, we don't have enough evidence to prove it one way or another. So, for me, I'm going to listen to everybody, whether I believe it or not. That's a different case. But to open it up and to share your opinion, that's what I really like about these shows, like what you have and other podcasts and everything else. People can get on there and they can share that. As far as believing, that people have seen them give birth or things like that. Now that's going to be a different thing, because you have a lot of people who, when you get down to it, what they're going to say is that, they've had 200 sightings, but it's been in like their mind's eye that they've had all these sightings. Whereas opposed to somebody like me or William, other people, we've actually laid eyes on a physical creature that we saw, one that left footprints, just like the Patterson Gimlin film. Not only did they film the subject, but they also cast the tracks that it left.
What would be incidents or claims? Because obviously, when you talk about Bigfoot, from your own experience, have you found any comparable ones to ones that are claims that are more popularly known? Ones that are instances, because there's obviously news and segments and research, and it's like that with any topic where there's been something that's happened, and it just doesn't fit the realm of like this couldn't be something I could easily explain with like an oil leak or something like that. There's got to be something like else there. You know, saying somebody's experience of like watching them witness a Bigfoot give birth. I don't have any other like national incidences that have happened like that, but there's the Gimlage footage that you mentioned. That is very well known. I think everyone has seen it. It's much like the Zapruder film.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. With those claims, I mean, I wasn't there, so I can't say with absolute 100%. Excuse me. That didn't happen the way they said it did. But at the same time, I kind of have my doubts because, but I believe that yes, there are physical creatures. You have if you look at the relic hominids that used to exist on this planet, and they these creatures, they really, you can get some interactions. If somebody sets up an area where they're habituating the creature, there are plenty of cases of that where they get used to getting whatever treats are put out there, and when they don't get it, you get an aggressive Bigfoot coming in tearing up some stuff. There are some cases of that where it's taking place, but I kind of lost my train of thought there.
Well, can I ask maybe what your guys' opinions are on the Gimlin film? Because I'm gonna play it real quick, but to me, it doesn't fit a lot of what you guys have described of Bigfoot. I don't know if maybe there was a change or there was some type of distinction based on where this was filmed at, that maybe it would be a different classification, but I'm gonna play this real quick. And I know this film has received a lot of criticism, but everyone has seen it, so it's the most commonly known one. So here's the film right here. We see a little bit more stabilized in this creature walking away. Doesn't have sound, so I'm just narrating on top of it. But I mean, at any moment, does this? What are your thoughts on this? Because this doesn't match what I've heard, and maybe it's because it's far away. But a lot of what you guys have described, it seems like the one that's more directly behind you, Steven, that bigger, kind of more muscular one that's got definitely worked on his traps a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I know people mention this being a female version, which might be this distinctive difference, but I don't. It's that besides something nationally reporting like this, we don't really have any other evidence to go on besides people's experiences, which makes it twice as difficult. Now there is FBI files and research like that happens to do with Bigfoot, which does give more weight to the argument, but then that leads into also a lot of speculation and theories.
Yeah. To me, the Patterson Gimlin film, it's definitely real. The guy named M.K. Davis from Mississippi, he's probably spent as much time as some of the JFK people have on looking over the footage and everything else, and he's done that with this film. And there's some things that he points out, just like on the thigh. There's a spot where her her thumb has hit her thigh and rubbed off some hair. You had just somewhere around in there, and the hair's kind of gone in that one spot where it's been rubbed off. You can see an injury on the thigh of some sort as she's walking through on some of the more cleared up, more defined pictures of it. But if you look at the way the head sits up above the shoulders, and it's not a long neck like what we have, and the muscles, coming from the back of the head down to the shoulders is different from how we're made. And also the other thing, whenever you see her walking along, pay attention to how her legs are, the angle that she brings them up a little bit higher than what we normally do whenever we're walking.
Well, another thing too about it is when she's walking, it's really hard to see, but I feel like I can see muscle movement, which if it's a person in a suit, you're not going to see muscle movement. Like you can see things like that.
You're absolutely right. The other thing about it is, I mean, it's been over 50 years since the Patterson Gimlin film first came out, became public, and people have been trying to debunk it for over 50 years, and no one has successfully done that. So whether this was just an absolute fluke or whatever, they were on horseback, so their scent would have been covered by the horses.
And like people were going to say that, they later came out and said that they faked it, but think about the pressure that somebody would be under if they found the creature that the government didn't want to come out. They'll eventually come out and be like, "Oh, we was just joking,"
Well,
like,
didn't Gimlin or one of the guys who was there also state that that footage was fake at a point, or made a claim about that, and then that became a big controversy too. I mean, that doesn't. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying that becomes more of a problem. It's like with the Zapruder film. That thing is very historic, and a lot of people either believe it's edited or it's not edited. But the issue with it really is that you had Zapruder talking about that he wanted influence into editing the film. So now we have the government saying it's not edited. So it's Zapruder saying, no, I made them take out certain frames. So which is it? So now it's like, it's hard to really, you just have to kind of look at the film, much like the Gimlin footage, and be like, it's interesting, but it's not going to be the evidence I'm going to bring to court and be like, we have this.
Right. Well, there was a guy named Bob Hieronymus who claimed that he was the guy in the suit. And it's laughable what the guy brought forth. First of all, he claimed he was like 6'6", and I heard another eyewitness who actually met him in real life said, yeah, he might have been 6 foot. So some of the stuff like that. But then you look at the movies, what Hollywood had at that time, Planet of the Apes. Would you look at the Planet of the Apes and look at this footage and think, yeah, sure, they made that? I mean, it's nowhere near the quality, the muscle movement, as Cecil pointed out a minute ago. All of that.
I will say, if there's if there's claims coming out now about seeing Bigfoot and photographs that come out, there is a thing in North Carolina. A bunch of monkeys escaped from a lab. There's like 42 of them. I was like, no way. And they're like, what are they researching on them there? I'm like, they were researching things like Alzheimer's and stuff like that. I was like, no, I would have never called that on my bingo card that we would have had Planet of the Apes happen. That's nuts. But here's the thing. What side do you pick? Do you go, I don't want them being tested on, but at the same time, now I don't want them out. That's crazy.
Yeah. 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 It's I can live with them being tested on better than I can live with them being out.
Yeah. But you mentioned something about the muscles on Bigfoot or the Sasquatch. I want to mention that when they do like the Planet of the Apes movie where they're making the suits, the traps are not like our traps. They connect more down to the actual shoulder and muscle and back fibers compared to how our muscles are actually lined up. So that's why they're more hunched over like this. And the traps are a little bit more bigger because it's kind of like Batman in the suit. He can't move his head. That's how chimps are with the neck. The neck is so built into the trap muscles and the lower back muscles, where our back is separated by different muscle fibers and things like that. So it's also why they're stronger as well too. But there's a lot of distinctions that would be completely different. Now, if I was going to mention my belief of Bigfoot, I believe that there was a type of creature or species that existed at a time. I don't know about it existing now. I understand that there's claims about it now, but again, for me to understand that, I'd have to see it myself, like actually be there to experience it. But I would like to get your guys' opinions, and then obviously a personal experience that made you believe why you did that. And Cecil had mentioned off air that he had a experience I've never ever heard him ever say before.
Go ahead, Cecil.
With mine, I mean, I've started seeing a lot of things recently, and Stephen remembers when that first happened. Did we talk about the screen on there?
Mm-hmm. I think we did, but it might have been after. It might have been we were talking after the show. Yeah, I know you talked about the screen.
Yeah, well, now, I mean, I've seen a video the other day that specifically says it may have been Wendigo. I've not actually had a Bigfoot experience yet. The thing that makes me think that they're real now, like, because I always kind of thought they were real, but since I've met Steven, he's such a genuine person that I firmly believe everything that he sends me now. Like, And some of the photo evidence is insane. Which this I like to show one for people. And Stephen, if you want preference this, you know which one it is. It's not Bigfoot. Because that's the thing with Stephen, like when he goes out and he looks for these big feet, whatever, Bigfoots, he catches other things that are not Bigfoot. So right here, can you preference what this is right here for everybody? If you can
Yeah,
see it.
yeah. That right there was the that's what we call the dogman photo. And the year before we got the this photo, William and I were together on this particular day. But a year before this, I had found a trackway. It was roughly about 4.5 inches wide. It was up on 2 feet, and about 4.5 inches wide. The track was a little bit longer than it was wide, so I was pretty sure that we had them in the area, but I didn't want to make too big a deal out of it because we're looking for Bigfoot. And then this year we found on that the following year after I found the original trackway, the steps were only about 30 to 36 inches in between prints, which probably would have fit pretty good with this right here.
Cecil, feel free to bring this back up, but can I share something just real quick?
Now, people are going to say something about that being fuzzy.
No. I just want to show you what I talked about with Steven one time. It looks exactly like this. There's no way you can't tell me it does not look like that.
Yeah, and the thing
about
that's
from, right? That's from Lady in the Water.
Really?
That movie, it's a skrunt is what they called it, and like whatever the folklore was down there. But that looked exactly like your photo. It looks so. That's why I was thinking. I was like, yo,
the reason that it's so
find a pool and Paul Giamatti is all I got to say.
The reason this one's so blurry though is because I've cropped it so much. Every time we do any kind of episode like this, I'm like, well, look at this, and then I crop it again. But as you can see right here, like right here, you got the ears right there. Right here's obviously the snout. You got the eyes right there. And then right here's what always threw me off because this is what makes me think it's some kind of shapeshifter. The narrowness of the arms is kind of strange.
Yeah. To me, I always thought it looked like the head was almost too big for the body.
Yeah.
But yeah, Cecil, you've got I sent you the newest track that was found about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, this one's kind of crazy too. Right here. Now this is a suspected dogman as well, correct?
Yeah.
That one right there is a wild one too because you can see
whose hand is that?
That's Steven.
No, that's actually my daughter's boyfriend.
How big is his hands?
He's not quite as big as I am. He's probably about 5'8".
I can palm a basketball, and I'm 5'8". So I just want to know the size of this paw print. This guy could be like he could have like a small hand or something, like Donald Trump hands.
My favorite thing about this one though is like if you get real down into it before it starts distorting a little bit, you can actually see the pad marks, like where they got them.
Fuck! Can you imagine coming across that in the middle of the woods at night and that thing just attacking you? God, I could think of a way better way to go.
Yeah, I think that I've actually heard those things do a really high pitch, shrill vocalization. What it was, I was out there one time. I was putting treats out at what we call the candy store, and my son, who you saw here a minute ago, he was in a truck. He had my phone, so I was just going to go out there and come back real quick. He was playing games. And had a pack of coyotes that I don't know why they started doing a howl there that evening. It was right at dark. And the first time I heard it, I heard something real high pitched and real shrill in there. And I thought, well, that sounds different for coyotes. And then when the coyotes, they started up again, I heard it the second time. And that's when I realized that's not a coyote that I've ever heard before in my life. I mean, it gave me chills just listening to the thing. So that's the one time for sure that I believe that I've actually heard one of these things do a vocalization.
Another one of my favorite ones. If you've ever heard the Black Eyed Kids story,
God,
I know you hate this one, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I'm going to tell a short one. In 1997 in Lubbock, Texas, I believe it was, a guy was outside of a movie theater. He's going to go pay his phone bill at night. These two kids came up to him like, "Hey, sir, can you give us a ride home?" or something like that, because they said they just came from the movie theater for watching Mortal Kombat. And so he got a real strange feeling about these kids because they were pale white with big black eyes. And he said that he just like, no, I'm not doing that. And all of a sudden he's like, give us a ride, things like this, trying to get in his car. So this laid way to the black eye kid theory. And Steven was actually shooting footage, like just shooting around, taking random pictures in the woods one day. And this kind of gave me a new theory on what this could be, because this is actually something that he shot. And if you've ever heard this theory, this is creepy as hell to me. So can you set up how this came about?
Yeah, what it was, I'm always looking for tree bows and stuff like that, and I found a small tree bow at the edge of a road, and I got off and I looked at it, and of course it had been there long enough the top it rotted off of it, and there was a small drain just like a couple feet wide that I was going to step across and go out there and look, because I had seen a tree, a dead tree that's probably 30 feet long, laying out across almost parallel to the ground. And I thought, well, that right there is kind of interesting. By the time I got to the small drain, I was going to step over it. I couldn't take another step. There was something that just wouldn't let me move forward. It's like I hit that wall of fear. So I took pictures, and I thought, well, I didn't know if I had anything or not. And when I got home, I got to looking in the picture, and I saw this. And I thought, well, I've got to go back the next day. So I went back the next day, and I took another picture to see if this was in the picture, because I stood in the same place. And so I took the picture and I went on my way. When I got home that day, I noticed that dead tree that's, like I said, 25, 30 feet long, it was gone in the next picture. So I thought, wait a minute, this isn't right. So I went back on Monday. I was thinking, well, maybe somebody went in there and they cut it up for firewood or something like that over the weekend. No, there was no tractor tracks, no four-wheeler tracks, no chips from where it might have been cut up with a chainsaw or something like that. That tree was just gone. And that's one of those really odd things I ran across that I just don't know about. But I mean, I kept going back and checking it, seeing if I could get the same stuff. But that first picture, that was the only one I have, that black-eyed kid.
I wasn't laughing at you, Stephen, but I was laughing at Cecil annotating the screen because his drawings were shit. You were going for a while. I was like, this is like Pictionary, trying to figure out what the hell he's trying to do.
Really?
But I want to ask, did you ever feel any physical or some type of illness? I've been trying to talk to people who have that UAP or paranormal, and some people think that it's kind of the same. But I've heard more experiences now that have been about feeling physical illness or some type of emotional distress or something that just randomly occurred. And I was wondering if you ever felt any type of physical with the paranormal stuff, not with the Bigfoot stuff as much, unless you had stuff with the Bigfoot.
Man, I had something happen to me in '98 that I still don't know about, but that was something that caused me to reach out to another guy that I met from Oklahoma who knew somebody from Alabama who talked about this stuff. And of course, we finally got in contact with him. That was Kubo, Cecil, by the way. And I had in '98, man, it was like October of '98, and I had to go to the brush, so to speak. We don't have bathrooms out there where we're at, so and everything was fine, everything normal. And as I was walking back, I started getting short-winded. My balance disappeared. By the time I made it back to where I was coming back to the loader, I had to sit down because I couldn't physically go anymore. And I remember walking across the gravel road there to the truck, and man, it was like being really, really drunk. because my steps were so bad. Broke out in bumps all over my hands, my feet, my head, uh, bowel spasms, vomiting, the whole deal. And we searched and searched and searched trying to figure out what that was. And I still can't tell you for sure what it was. The only thing the doctor told me at that time was that it could have been a mast cell release, which is kind of like an asthma attack. But it's actually really similar to anaphylactic shock when you look at it that way. But man, I know nothing bit me or anything like that. But that was one of those things. I think I was like 26 when that happened. The doctor told me, said, if this ever happens to you again, you're out in the woods, you're probably not going to survive it. That's great. so exactly what it was, whether it was some kind of medical deal or whatever, I don't know. But I have heard of the people being in the woods. Kumbos talked about that quite a bit, where they would get what's called zapped, where the Bigfoot would use infrasound, and people would get sick, physically sick. And you can find documentation where the governments have tested that, and they get the same results out of it. Sometimes people would have to sleep for 8 or 10 hours before they could finally get over it.
What, and for either of you can answer this, but what would be more believable to you when it comes to either the cryptid talk or the paranormal talk? Because I've always find myself more leaning towards the paranormal. I don't know if that's just because it's more common in public, at least my view of things. I've talked to more people with paranormal experiences, and it's easier to find people with paranormal experiences than it is to find people with. And I am part of Shane's groups and stuff like that on there, and see. But a lot of people aren't really claiming Bigfoot claims. They're kind of debunking, or they're looking at other people's Bigfoot claims. So it's been a lot easier for me to understand the paranormal subject when it comes to exposure, even with televisions like that too. There are shows on both, but there's more paranormal interest, mostly because it's like somehow linked in with like true crime. Every time you see a grisly murder, it's always haunted afterwards. You're not like gonna get murdered and then just disappear. You're coming back.
I like to give my point of view on it first. I mean, the one that would be more tangible for me to believe would be a cryptid sighting, just for the sole fact that we don't know all the creatures in the world. We like to think we know everything. And Bigfoot specifically could be, just another primate that's loose that has a little bit of knowledge, that can stay away from people. And if you live in the woods, everybody's always like, well, where's the body? Where's the body? Where's the bones? How often, if you've ever traveled in the woods, how often have you run across a dead deer bone? You know what I mean? Like, it's very rare. Because of all the animals and the way that everything gets scattered and the things that eat this. So another creature being out in the middle of the woods or up in the Rocky Mountains or whatever it may be, I mean, if they have the keen sense to stay away from us as much as they can, and they have, advanced knowledge on being able to hide from the predator that we are, then it would be very rare to find anything like this. And there's new species being found constantly.
Oh yeah, all the time. Yeah.
So it's not hard for me to believe that there could be a bigger one that we haven't found yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's with whenever humans became enemies to them, it's they avoid us at all costs. There's times we have some that will actually come around people's houses, now hang around in the area, which I've had that here where I live at. I've heard whistles, tree knocks, everything goes absolutely just quiet, and that right there is this. I guess I'll stick my foot in my mouth here. Sometimes with the Bigfoot subject, sometimes it really seems like you're going down a rabbit hole. And that's just my honest opinion on it, because some of the things that you can hear that you shouldn't be hearing where you're hearing it at. Ron Moorhead is a guy who has been telling the same story since the 70s when him and Al Berry recorded the Sierra sounds. You can listen to Ron and he'll tell you, there were times they would be inside their camp and they would hear it sounded like everything outside was just absolutely being destroyed by something. And they would go outside the camp and nothing had been disturbed. But Ron, he's going to reveal some, going to show some pictures that he didn't show anybody for a long, long time because he didn't think anybody would believe him. And that's 24 and 25-inch tracks that they found where they recorded the Sierra sounds. So,
I'm sure Shaquille O'Neal wasn't out there.
I just
But I
want
mean,
go ahead,
go ahead.
Cecil.
Well, I mean, you got to think about the firsthand accounts of Bigfoot for the most part doesn't seem real aggressive, but there are points in history where Bigfoot almost had to be aggressive, like the Battle of Ape Canyon, the Oklahoma War. I think was it the Oklahoma War? Bigfoot War?
yeah, that right there. That's kind of up for debate whether or not that was as accurate as what it was portrayed. But yeah, I mean,
And of course, when the Navy and not the Navy, but the Army or whatever armed force it was that went into was it? I think Kumbo said it was down towards Sevierville, Tennessee,
yeah,
where they were in the woods looking for a Bigfoot that had, or a series of big feet that have, how do you say it? But whatever. But they had to go in and actually eradicate a bunch because they were starting. It was crazy.
I remember that story, but just so context to the discussion, so people don't think we're off in like La La Land that never have ever heard of this before. This is an FBI file on the Bigfoot thing. They did examination of claims, but it says apparently responding to someone who had sent some type of laboratory examinations inquiring concerning the Bigfoot Information Center and exhibition, which was created based on hair getting sent over to. Now, this just states, I have received your letter of November 24th. Hey, that's today. No shit. The day Lee Harvey Oswald was shot, too. That's wild. Wow, this is what they were doing. They should have been looking at for JFK's killer. These motherfuckers. He says, I have received requesting an FBI laboratory analysis of 15 unidentified hair and tissue. The FBI laboratory conducts examinations primarily of physical evidence for law enforcement agencies in connection with criminal investigations, occasionally on a case-by-case basis. In the interest of research and scientific inquiry, to make exemptions to this general policy. With this understanding, we will examine the hairs and tissues mentioned in your letter. They should be submitted to the FBI laboratory, or scientific analysis section, J. Edgar Hoover Building, Washington, D.C. So people had sent hairs in, obviously about Bigfoot, and just, I don't know, it feels weird just saying Bigfoot, but because there's obviously more than what we're talking about here. But they are informed from time to time. We have been informed that hair supposedly of a Bigfoot has been sent for examination to the FBI, has been examined by the FBI, and with the conclusion as a report of the examination that it is not possible to compare the hair with that of any known creature on this continent. Now, you can take that out of context and say that's how you know. But the real thing is that when people do and have these types of claims or hairs or things like this, and they want to get them tested, their evidence either has turned up missing or cannot be found again. So that becomes very, very difficult. And you get to wonder why, what's the big question? And you obviously need claims and evidence to support your points if you're going to be taken seriously. And it makes it more difficult when there's no trust in people and their institutions to want to submit this evidence to them. Now, do I believe they're covering up something? I have no clue. Like I said, I do believe that they existed at a point. But it's now about trying to verify. And I think me and Cecil have mentioned it in the episode previous to this. But I do think you are genuine, Stephen. We did mention that. I think I 100% believe you. I don't necessarily believe all the baby birthing stuff that I've heard from other people. But I believe the more like there is probably something that is out there that we just haven't been able to explain, and maybe it's been hidden. And looking through FBI files and other documents, I've started to notice that there has been a large amount of repression on the certain subject or suppression on the subject. So I've always thought that was weird, considering that they always examine so many things. And with the UAP discussion becoming more popularized and known, I'm starting to see more of a discussion about this type of stuff where I go, maybe it's just been super common and just people have been afraid to talk about it for like a really long time because it just seems like wacko shit. And now it's like becoming more normalized where people are like, oh, so wait, this just like, I've had UFO experiencers that I'll go like, guy worked on an oil rig. He was on to talk about something completely different about government stuff. And then he goes, here's my weird shit, and just literally tossed out is like, there would be a UFO that would be just above the ocean, right up near our oil rig, and that nobody would believe you, so you just kind of let it go, and you thought it was a mirage or something like that. But he was just tossed that out for like 2 minutes, and I'm like, hang on a second, go back. I want to talk more about that. He's like, it's not even that important. I was like, it is important. What do you mean?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's a there. I personally know people who have collected hair samples and sent them off, and their hair sample it was a Smithsonian. I guess maybe we can coin that phrase.
Yeah, we need to. Well,
They never got anything back. They never got their hair sample back. They never got any information at all on what they had sent in. I mean, it just disappears. And a few who have sent some stuff off to like the game and fish of whatever state they were in, sometimes the would come back as unknown primate. Well, when you break it down, whenever you look at it, for the people who claim that the Bigfoot are just another type of people, you look at that, and science will tell us that we're primates. So,
It's funny you mentioned the Smithsonian because I was going to look up claims before that FBI thing about the Smithsonian hiding giant bones. And it says the only claims that the Smithsonian has, and they're all scandals dealing with embezzlement and stuff like that. I'm like, I'm pretty sure somebody might have, I think there's a little bit more to the Smithsonian than that. They got a little bit of a not acknowledging history.
there's there's actually a story from my hometown that involves the Smithsonian. I'm glad that was brought up. I've told Stephen this 100 times probably, but I personally know this person. They found a head, a stone head, which they believed were fossilized. I'm starting to think it might not have been, but it showed an injury right here. They believed it was a fossil head that they found in a creek bed. I know the person personally that found it. And so what they did was they turned it over to the Chamber of Commerce in the hometown where I'm at, and the Chamber of Commerce got in contact with the government to come and do research on it and see what it actually was, because it looked like a statue head, honestly. But the problem with that is there wasn't people in southeastern Kentucky making statues that elaborate. You know what I'm saying? Like at any point. and and they found it in a creek bed, and it just so happened to be after a flood, and all the sediment was washed away. So it's untelling how long it had been there. And the Smithsonian, somebody from the Smithsonian came and said, "We'll do the research." And this has been 16 years ago. Never heard back. They've asked for the head back. They said they can't have it back. So I mean, they do stuff like that constantly. And I believe it's Hadley that know somebody that had a little bitty skull on their desk. It might be Morgana. I can't remember which one, but they had a little bitty skull on their desk. And somebody came in one day and was like, "What is that?" And then somebody that was like into bone research and things like that. And he's like, "Oh, it's a baby skull from blah, blah, blah." They're like, "That's not a baby skull. All its teeth that came out. That's a human skull, like a full grown human." And the Smithsonian came to do research on that, and nothing ever came of it, and they didn't get it back either. So that constantly happens. Oh,
yeah, Smithsonian.
Smithsonian.
I wanted
I
to
love.
mention this, and I'm trying to look up the guy's name because he was on my show, and he had got his there's a famous article with him. He's on my show, and you meet people for the first time. I think I told you guys this. And he was kind of looking at me weird, and I didn't realize until after the conversation he was blind in one eye. And then a week after being on my show, his vision after 55 years got restored. And he became this huge story, and I had him back on to discuss that. But I was like, you didn't tell them that was because of me or anything. He was like, it happened when I was talking to you, and I was like, oh God. But he would literally so his thing was that he found Viking iron bauxites in the river down in the UK where he explores and finds these cool, interesting rocks, and he would take them to the museum to have them analyzed and find out they were from the Viking, because nobody knew where the Vikings went. They kind of just disappeared, whether they assimilated or whether they traveled. And he was trying to tell them like they were here a lot longer than the history books are saying they were here. And the university gave him back his rocks and everything like that. And like, we're not dealing with this. We're not even going to mess with it in the historical society. And it was because they didn't want to kind of reference that they had pagan roots, because apparently that's a big controversy. So there are a lot of things with museums and things like that where things can really tear up the whole, and you can say that could be a factor of not wanting to be associated with that type of history, whether it's a history of racism, whether it's a history of whatever, but also at the same time, it messes with your whole fucking exhibit. If you're about to change however millions of dollars got spent into the whole thing, like we found out about, what was it, the Hobby Lobby had the fucking tablet of Gilgamesh or whatever it was in their fucking thing, because apparently they have all the museum curators somehow get into the black market or the trade market of art and all these rare precious antiquities, and somebody had bought the tablet of Gilgamesh and had it sitting in its basement. It's like, that's wild.
Yes. Yes.
I never find shit like that at Hobby Lobby.
I find better stuff at thrift stores.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of times I wish I knew what I was actually looking at whenever I go to an antique store or thrift store or something. So,
So
there
when
was
it,
a person that found the only other photo of Billy the Kid at a yard sale and sold it for like millions of dollars. I wish that would happen to me.
well,
yeah.
there was a person who found a rough draft of a Da Vinci painting, and they had finished it and painted over it. Like, so when they finished it, they added more paint and stuff onto it. And it was a rough sketch. So this painting they found in a museum. Someone had noticed something that was a little bit off about it. And they started kind of like scratching off the paint to see what was going on, and found out there was a rough sketch of a Da Vinci under it. And the person had completed it and then also added stuff on top of it to really hide the original. And so the painting was valued at like over like, I think it was like $1 billion or something like that. And I was like, damn, why? I mean, I couldn't even imagine painting over a Da Vinci.
Yeah. I know. That's wild to consider that.
Especially if you have it your whole time, someone just finds it in your basement or something like that. You're like, wait, I had a what? The only painting nobody cares about, even though we all studied it in school, is the Hitler paintings. If you have one of those in your house, you're not telling a fucking soul.
No. No. Absolutely not.
What do you think when it comes to the overall experience and discussion? Like, how do you validate sources? I mean, have you found anything comparable to what you've seen or what you've heard that makes you more in belief? Or
Oh yeah. Yeah. That's the thing for me. I never went to a Bigfoot conference until 2017. I thought about it a couple of years prior to that, but as I may have mentioned on the show before, by that time I'd seen enough and I'd had so many experiences and stuff like that. I was probably driving my wife crazy because I couldn't stop. This was, it was just, it's really unfair to her. And I finally went to a Bigfoot conference and I met people. And as I would tell them things that I had experienced, they were like, yeah, we had that too. And they might be from a different state, maybe Oklahoma or Texas or something like that. And they'd had a very similar experience to what I had experienced. And man, whenever you run across somebody else and you find out you're not the only person who's experienced this, that's a real load lifted off your shoulders right there. It's kind of like medicine you can't buy. Whenever you finally get validation for what you've experienced or what you've seen, and somebody else that you've never met before has a very same thing, you know that there's no way they knew what you had seen or experienced.
can I ask what your thoughts are on the people that give criticism to the Bigfoot community? Obviously, I have a large interest in the skeptics' view of things, because as much as like you're going to get criticism either way, but as much as people can criticize me for like being a critic or just having that opposing view, not opposing view, but just I'm bringing in the devil's advocate argument. I like I said, I do believe Steven 100% is authentic, but there's a lot of things where people, whether you're on the side for it or you're the side against it, they go, oh, you're just gullible, or then you're just a critic and you're just an asshole. It's like, that's not what this is trying to be. But there are people and criticisms on the Bigfoot field that it does become an issue that I have an issue with, because at any moment in time, your time and that person's time is still something. And if they're willing to come on and give you everything, bring everything to the table and just have a conversation with you, you're obligated to hear them out. And a lot of these skeptics come up with, and we get it in the JFK community, they come up with simple excuses of like, oh, it's probably the most likely thing or the most common thing or obvious thing is probably what is it? Occam's razor, that argument that comes up. So it's like, and it makes it difficult because a lot of these skeptics of the UAP thing, they spend so much time debunking where I'm like, God damn, you're so full of piss and vinegar. You can't even see over your fucking eyes right now. Like, you just got to really kind of come to the table and listen to people. I mean, worst comes to worst, you don't believe it. You just go, well, I appreciate the time. And then your opinion's not changed, but you're not harming anybody. So I want to know about the criticism to the Bigfoot community. And also, Cecil, if you've experienced criticism in paranormal or types of discussions of having things, because I'm sure even I lightly touch the topic, I receive it sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, I'm somebody that's always been conspiratorial minded. So even my co-host Tully, when we first, started hanging out and I'd go over these conspiracies and stuff, he's like, you're fucking nuts, man. Like, and then eventually I love to see the evolution of people that you're around all the time where you're like, well, here's this, you go ahead and read this, or here's this photo, here's this, and then like they start coming around, and now I would say Tully's way further out and around than I am because he's like something unlocks eventually in your mind. But you have those single interactions where, like, I think these UFOs probably aren't coming from space. They're probably coming from underwater, which I said years ago. And then you have a congressional meeting or a committee meeting where they say, "Oh, they're coming from underwater." Like, like if I told you, like I told you, it's years ago. And as if it kind of validates everything, it makes me feel good when people are proven wrong on these. So that's my
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. With the as far as the critics, to me, they serve a purpose. I mean, my wife is a faithful critic of what I bring back, and I mean that in the best way possible. It's I can come back with a photo and I can show it to her, and she'll like, I don't see what you're seeing. It's kind of okay. I've got to get something better to maybe prove it to you. And as far as these other people, it really makes you wonder: are they legitimate critics, or is just somebody just being a horse's rear end, toward everybody who presents evidence of whatever kind it is? Because they seem to dismiss every single thing that comes out. They'll tell you the Patterson-Gimlin footage is not real. They'll tell you there's no other footage of Bigfoot, which there is. There's a lot of footage of Bigfoot. I mean, there's a lot more footage than just the Patterson-Gimlin film, and there are a lot more people who have pictures and audio and everything else. And if you compile all that evidence together and you put it in one spot, to me, it would be be something that you would really have to consider before you just dismissed everything out of hand. Especially when you get to the audio files. I mean, you can go to college websites, or maybe not college website, but there's some. They have known recordings of all the known animals that exist in this country, here in Canada and all that. And you can find what sounds a different owl makes, or a coyote makes, or a bobcat, or whatever else, different birds. And whenever you come up with an audio file that does not match up with any known animal, then to me, you should give that serious consideration as to what you're actually hearing, because that's something to me that can be proven pretty good. I know people from, oh my goodness, I know people from coast to coast who have photos and everything else of Bigfoot. They've all had different encounters.
Like actual coast to coast, not the radio program.
Yes. I'm talking, I know people from Virginia to Oregon, and I've talked to them, and they've got different evidence. Believe it or not, a couple of years ago, I actually was contacted by two people from Oregon who had, they heard about me. They got in contact with me. One guy, I had actually had some pictures of what he had seen. I mean, he definitely had something in the picture. To say exactly what it was, I can't say 100%, it was Bigfoot, because if you take a picture of a human far enough away, it can be distorted enough that you could misidentify. I'm not saying that's what the case was, but I had another man. He was cut firewood in Oregon, and the place that he would go to, he was constantly getting messed with. I know a guy in South Texas who he just sets up a banner and says, basically saying, if you had a Bigfoot experience or whatever, you seen one, come tell me your story, in South Texas. So yeah, they've got that from Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana. I mean, all over Missouri. There's another really good researcher in Missouri, and he has a lot of evidence. He's cast so many tracks of a family group that you can actually see the foot size as it increases as the creature gets older. And he even came up with the idea to put numbers on rocks, because when him and the other guy would be sitting in camp and doing the Bigfoot research, they were getting rocks thrown at them. And so he knew where the rocks were being thrown from. And so when we put the numbers on the rocks, when they were tossed into camp, they would find the rocks and they'd look and see, yeah, hey, this is number whatever. And knowing they had their proof right there, you know. So it's interesting to me. I keep thinking, I keep expecting those guys to come out with some really good footage at some point. You know, they do have FLIR footage.
Do you expect that the footage will be received well because of how good technology and AI is getting? I mean, the incredible things that I'm seeing created that aren't there because it was created by AI. Usually I thought it was just going to be the boomers can't figure it out because they're just older and they don't know what they're seeing. But now I'm looking at them like, fuck, is that real? Like I've seen the Jake Paul thing with Mike Tyson where they're looking face to face and then Mike Tyson just goes like this and starts shaving Jake Paul's beard. And it was AI doing it. And I was like, dude, I saw it. And that's not what happened. But that looks so damn realistic where you're like, oh, no, maybe this is going to be the future where now UFO claims and things like this, everyone's tossing through, oh, it's created by AI. So I was like, I don't know.
Well, that's the whole thing. Like, everybody's always like misinformation, misinformation. These people are crazy conspiracy theories, but I fully believe that they're using AI to create misinformation. Everybody even more skeptical because there's so much real stuff that's coming out. And you know, the whole going back to the finding new species all the time, the Bondo ape, for example, the Billy ape, it was a cryptid for hundreds of years, and it's a highly aggressive, they call it the lion eater. But in 2003, they confirmed that there's this huge ape in the Congo that's highly aggressive and different than any other species. So it's completely possible that new things are being found in modern times. I know 2003 for a youngster like Rob here was a lifetime ago, but for us, you know, I was a teenager when this came out. So it happened in my lifetime that they found a new species of ape.
Yeah.
So,
and the thing I'm going to talk about right there is the people who were originally reporting the Bondo ape, the Billy ape, they never got the credit. It wasn't until somebody with a science degree went there and finally said, okay, yeah, they can be real now because we've seen them. You know, it's that, and to me that's something that's always kind of been a sore subject for me. You know, is we have to wait for an adult to tell us it's actually real before we can say it is.
yeah.
So,
And you have people that's worked for like Kumbo, for example. Kumbo is a highly intelligent, highly educated person that's worked for NASA. And if you believe NASA, you know, he shot down my NASA claims like that. But he firmly believes and he's seen and he's researched all these creatures for years. You know, it's not a group of loons. Like you got people like Steven, who's a normal person that just had experience and continues to have these experiences. And then you have somebody that worked for NASA that one day he's like, you know, these things are real. I'm going to find proof of them. You know, it's wild. It's a wild situation because there's always new things being found.
What do you think about people coming out with claims when the topic becomes more normal? Do you accept those or do you just think that's someone trying to ride the coattails? Because obviously there's an industry on everything. Any way that someone can make a buck, they're going to make a buck. But I see a lot of people that start claiming things about UAP subjects and writing books about UAP subjects, but I can look up their name and never see any claim before that of them even talking about it on a platform or bother speaking about it. And it's where all these people that have been fighting for so long get really upset with them because they were quiet for so long. Now I understand it becomes more normalized, less taboo, but at the same time, it makes it very, very difficult to accept what they're saying when they're writing a book and they're claiming something. It's like, well, I've met a lot of people where I can tell within 20 minutes of a conversation they're not being completely genuine. I won't call those people out, but I've noticed it, and it makes it difficult to speak with them because then I end up wanting to tune out. But I've noticed that with every subject.
You don't buy into the Bigfoot erotica stuff.
I've seen that. I was interested in talking about it, but then I thought that'd lead to like some other wild shit I don't think can go on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. People are going to try to make money off of any and everything they can. So it's as far as me, I've never made any money with it. I mean, it's if I was trying to make money with this right here, I'd have to have a completely different game plan on it because I'm not making money with it. This is a hobby of mine to go do because I know for me, I know that they're real. I know they exist. So whenever the weather gets right and I have the opportunity to get out in the woods to go see if I can find anything, I'm looking for anything that I can consider evidence for their existence. There's a lot of tree manipulations and things like that. You'll find trails, not walking trails around here. I remember for a long time I really didn't when I was started listening to Bigfoot podcasts and stuff like that. People talk about going off trail. I was like, what do they mean going off trail? And then I finally figured it out. Oh, that's what I've done all my life. Is I know something is over here, so I just take off walking through the woods and go to it. But because I've never been one to go walk the national park trails or stuff like that. So
How do you handle mind speak?
there are people that I know, and they tell me it's a real thing. I can't prove them wrong. So I'm gonna believe what they tell me. I mean, it's people that I know that I've had multiple conversations with. Something that happened earlier this year was a guy from Louisiana. He had gone out with some other people that we know, and they were having the mind speak uh, talk with the Bigfoot here in South Arkansas, and for whatever reason, after that took place, the guy, he has his dog. He takes his dog with him everywhere. And his dog sat in his lap on the way out there to the woods where they had this encounter at. And when they were coming back to camp, his dog wouldn't even sit by him, whatever that means. However you want to process that one, I'll let you chew on that one for a while.
How do you feel about people that have been contacted or experienced something, whether it's paranormal, cryptid, or UFO? What do you think about them being more susceptible, like kind of leaving an imprint on them?
Yeah, there's some people
Well, hold
who
on.
will.
Can I ask when you experienced your first one, did it uptick from there?
Yeah, I kind of for the first couple of years after that, I would some of the stuff that maybe I hadn't paid attention to before, I started paying attention to. And as I think back on it, I mean, there were some times whenever I was a teenager, like 14 or so. I used to didn't have a 3-wheeler or anything like that. If I wanted to go deer hunting or squirrel hunting, whatever, I just had to walk. And sometimes, my walk would in me making my circle. I might walk for a mile and a half, making my loop. And I'd heard some stuff back then. I remember one time that trying to explain to my dad what I was hearing out in the woods because I was hearing something kind of a squeaky type noise. And it's kind of, man, I just don't know what that was because Dad, he looked at me, shrugged his shoulders. He didn't know that either. Uh, but yeah, I remember another time. It's like 1991. We were in East Texas, close to Rappahannock Lake. We were on the area where they could actually, if they get too much water, they could back the water up on the landowner's property. And hearing owls go off at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and there were two of them, and they were communicating back and forth. And I remember there was another guy there with us, and he's like, "Man, those are really really early." But yeah, after my experience though, it's from like 2012 through 2017 when I had a second sighting. Uh, yeah, man, I heard vocals. I heard I'll go ahead and tell this because I haven't really told too many people about it because I really didn't, kind of like Ron Moorhead and his big tracks. I didn't know if people would really believe me or not. But I heard the longest howl I've ever heard in my life. One morning, it was like 4:30, 5 o'clock one morning. I was actually inside my house. It would have been, I think it was probably a chicken litter truck or something like it. Yeah, where they, instead of having duals on the back of the truck, they just put one really wide tire with deep lugs on it. And you could hear this truck just roaring coming down the highway. And because of that, I think that's probably what made the coyotes start doing their song. And amongst the coyotes, I heard this more of a bass type howl. Without exaggerating this any at all, I would say it probably lasted for 25 seconds. I've never heard another howl that lasted that long and that loud. Like I said, I was inside my house when I heard the thing. What else can do that? Something that long, sustain a call for that long. That's a set of lungs that humans just don't have. Also experienced the other vocalizations like that. The loudest footsteps I've ever heard in my life. I'd gone outside one night to, I guess, kind of mark my territory. And I heard what sounded like a cow walking upright on its hind feet through the leaves. It was just a crunch, crunch, crunch. And I have no idea why I did it, but I did a grunt. I just went, ugh, and it stopped. And I stood outside for another 10 minutes thinking this thing was going to move again. I never heard that sound again after I grunted. And I quit doing calls. I used to go out and do calls by myself. And I remember it was in August of 2015. I quit doing calls because I was on the Arkansas-Oklahoma line. It was like 4:15, 4:30 in the morning. And I had stirred up a pack of coyotes the day before. And I thought, well, I'm going to see if I can get those coyotes going again. Well, sure enough, I got the coyotes going again that morning, but off to the north, the coyotes were to the east of me, and to the north of me, there was a vocalization that came back to me, basically mimicking the call that I had made. That one unsettled me because it wasn't that far away from me. And it's dark, and I didn't have a flashlight or anything else. I was 6 miles from the closest town, and no gun, no flashlight, no nothing.
That's the first time I've heard you tell anything about the 25-second howl. I can actually do something. I can give some about, if nobody knows how long that is. I used to do metal vocals, like I used to sing in a metal band, and I'm dedicating my life to being able to do long, low growls and things like that. 25 seconds, you're about ready to pass out. Like it's nuts. If you're you're pushing your diaphragm and everything into it, if you're howling that long, you're about ready to pass out. Like you're getting light.
Yeah, the longest call that we've got some where I've done some calls. We used to get together with some other people, and do group calls. I would start it out with just a lower register howl, and I was able to keep that call going, for like 8 to 10 seconds. About 10 seconds was about my max of what I could hold it at that time. So, but yeah, it was just unbelievably impressive.
Do you think your memory is more improved because there's fear that imprints onto that and makes you remember it more?
Yeah, I think I really believe that anytime you have an upset condition of whatever it is, whether you hear something that you don't think you should be hearing, or whether it's an upset condition in life, a lot of times those memories tend to stick with you more than others.
I don't have any cool Bigfoot experiences, but I do. Cecil, I think has already heard one of my stories about it. But at work at like 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm taking trash out or something like that. I go over to the dumpster to go toss some trash in, and a fucking squirrel jump. I'm not a small guy. I'm not a small guy. I'm in pretty good shape, but the fucking squirrel jumped out of the damn tree. I screamed like that, scared the hell out of me. And then there was a homeless person that they shoot up back there. So there was a guy sleeping back there by the dumpster, and the squirrel jumped out like, I mean, leaped out like when you see him fall from trees. But this was coming at like a jumping angle at me, and it jumped at me. I backed up. It ran around the corner, and then I heard the homeless guy go. It was that's the weirdest interaction I've ever had at night, like outside, like in the where the woods would be. Uh, but it makes me wonder because I can like when it comes to fear and stuff like that, your mind can really amplify certain things. So I tend to ask that question when I'm trying to be a little bit more critical on some things. Because I do think it makes a memory last longer too. It's the same thing with Dealey Plaza witnesses that were there for the assassination of JFK. Their memory is a lot stronger because of the fear and this scenario of what was going on. So it can't necessarily be as debunked. It's such like with witness testimony is really largely only accepted if it's people that served with war experience because of the trauma and the fear in that situation. So fear does play an indicator on a person's memory.
Going back to what you said about being scared by the squirrel. I'm 6'4" and I weigh about 334 pounds. If that would have happened to me, I would scream like a little child. I'm terrified.
Dude, I stepped back with my fist cocked, ready for. It happened so fast. I mean, immediately when I threw that trash in there, and this thing just right out of there. I was like, I was laughing because I didn't know there was a homeless person sleeping back there behind the trash can. I heard him scream, and I just walked back inside. I'm not dealing with this.
I don't know what it is. I would fist fight a bear, no problem. But send a possum toward me, I will run terrified.
I'm just afraid of rabies.
I'm scared of little things. I don't know why.
I've had so many wildlife experiences. Like I'll be sitting out back at work and we have foxes in our town. But this thing was running at me, and I knew by my work location that there's a food line, a grocery store right next door, and people like to leave cat food out for the cats. So we have all these stray cats everywhere. So this thing started running up to me, and it's like pitch black, and I don't have my glasses on to see distance. So I see this small little creature running up to me. I'm like, oh, cool. So I bend down to go like, if you're gonna pet it. And the thing got like within like maybe me to my laptop right now. And I saw it was a fox, and I was like, oh, I was like, no, don't you dare. I'm not getting the 18 different shots in me, you nasty. And I just like went back inside.
Oh yeah. Yeah, as far as back being scared, I can remember one time William and I was with William, and we were doing vocalizations, and we gone in where we were at. I was finally able to get something to respond to us. And so we drove back closer to that direction so it could be so we could hear it a little bit better. And while we were out standing on the road, out there in the dark, and I heard the truck door lock. Because the person that was in the truck, they'd heard enough. They had already locked the doors while we were outside. So that's the kind of thing, that also goes on, because for us, we may not be all there, is why we enjoy it so much. But for other people who are, it's kind of like, I'm hearing stuff I haven't heard before, and I really don't like it. You're on your own. So,
and I'm not like just like a not wilderness guy. I've had my car break down. I had to walk like 8 miles to my house, and there's nothing but trees and forest on a pitch black highway. And in my shorts at 40-degree weather, not even 40 degrees, maybe 38-degree weather. I'm gonna bring it down 2 degrees so I seem tougher. But I remember hitchhiking that, and dude, if I didn't have my headphones in, when my headphones died, probably halfway back to my house, there was sounds I was hearing where I go, I think my brain is creating these. And I was like, I don't know if they're real or not, and I do not want to find out. But you start walking a teensy bit faster to get back to your house at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask you this, because I'm not going to make you late for church or anything, but I do want to ask this because it's a question me and kind of Cecil were talking about a lot. Does your religious views feel affected by knowing that there's another type of creature or something, or have you come across anybody's religious views that were affected? Because I noticed that there's a lot of neglect in the alien conversation because of people's largely their religious views or in other areas as well too. So it's not trying to pry into your religion or criticize religion. I'm not religious, but I understand, and I want to know if that does play a factor, because I've noticed it with some people who debunk the UAP subjects. They're largely conservative people that debunk things, but they're largely have these old Christian values where I was like, why can't aliens exist? It's like, because God only created us. And I'm like, All right, that makes sense. Sure.
No, it doesn't with me. And yeah, I'm aware of the people who say no, they can't exist. As far as the spiritual aspect to it, it's for the people. I know some people that they really don't buy into the paranormal type stuff because they're atheists or whatever. I've actually met some people like that. But for me, no. I mean, if you really sit down and read the Bible and you really take it for what it says, then yeah, I mean, an example, I was talking to a friend of mine last Saturday night from Alaska, and we were talking about L.A. Marzulli because he had him on his show, and there were people in the chat, who were really harsh about that because L.A. believes, these are Nephilim, which would be part fallen angel, part human, or something like that. And for me, I told him, I said, it's like, what could this be? And so I told him, in Genesis, Adam, according to the book of Genesis, Adam, he looked around to try to find a helpmate. If there wasn't anything close enough that possibly could have been a helpmate, then why would he have even had to have looked? So as far as that, I think there's a very good possibility, especially whenever you look at the fossil record, that these creatures have always been around. It's a hominid. They have the ability to walk upright and all that. They have found bones of the Gigantopithecus. Oh my goodness, the name escapes me of some of these other skulls that I found. But I have seen creatures that actually have the same skull or bone features that some of these ancient hominids had. I've seen them. They're not supposed to exist. They were supposed to have died out thousands of years ago, but I've still seen them. And as far as the other stuff, the paranormal activity, yeah, with a fallen angel, they can manifest themselves to appear to be something that they are not necessarily are, but they have the ability to, I guess we would probably consider that shape shifting, is what we'd probably do. And then you also have disembodied spirits, which would be demons, what we call demons. They have to have a host body to be able to function like they want to. So whenever you look at all that right there, I mean, for the people who are having a really narrow view of it, I think they should actually consider what the text says more closely, take it a little more serious on all that.
Cecil, I don't know what your religious views are. I'm not even going to ask. But just so we can get Stephen out of here, because I know he's got to go. Where can people find your guys' links? I do appreciate the time you guys gave me to talk on my show. And if there's anything else you wanted to add on here at the end, please do.
For me, it's Wearing the Folk. You can find us on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter, everywhere on audio. Steven is on Weird Awakenings every Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern. I pop on there sometimes. I used to be a constant host, but life changes made me have to cut back on something. So, and Stephen, do you have anywhere else where they can find you? And Weird Awakenings can be found on the Weird Realities Network on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and I believe they got audio too.
Yeah, it's basically just Weird Awakenings for the most part for me. It's somebody, if they want to try to contact me, I mean, they could either reach out to Cecil or Robbie. They might find me on Facebook, send me a message or something. It's do it that way. I mean, that's what it is. I don't do much on social media. I have it so I can reach out to people. That's pretty much it.
Well, don't reach out to me because I don't want any psychopaths reaching out to me. I already have too many listeners, too many people putting that out there. Like, hang on, I love my people, but good God, some of them have some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Nobody's getting feet photos. Stop asking. Stop asking for feet photos. You're not getting it. But
contact Cecil for that.
But thank you so much for listening to this episode of Out of the Blank Podcast, and stay tuned for our next episode.